Joining us now is Newt Gingrich, dear friend and mentor, former Speaker of the House, and of course Fox News contributor and author of Trump's Triumphs, which is out now. So, Newt, we've got to replace the mullahs. We've got to have regime change. You're suggesting, frankly, that no deal would ever be any good. And I totally agree with you, unless and until the mullahs are replaced by some kind of secular government. Tell us more about your thinking, please.
Well, let me start with the fact that for 46 years, since 1979, the mullahs, the theocracy, has said death to America. And as recently as a few months ago, the Ayatollah Khamenei went on national television to say, I want to reassure you, death to America is not a slogan, it is a policy. And of course, the other part of that policy is death to Israel. So we've had a 46-year experience of what it's like to try to deal with people who have been again and again and again engaged in terrorism. In 1984, the State Department said they were the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world. That's been true ever since. So at some point, you've got to learn the lessons of history. The fact is, you wouldn't have to use B-2 bombers and you wouldn't have to use giant blockbusters if you had a regime which agreed that it would destroy Fordow as part of the peace agreement. The fact is, if you get regime change, you're in a different world. And by the way, you wouldn't need to use American tax dollars. There are an amazing number of very successful Iranian American businessmen and businesswomen who would be thrilled to be able to go back and invest in rebuilding Iran and creating a prosperous, dynamic country. It's twice the size of Texas. It has huge resources. It has people who are inherently very smart, very well educated. And if they were liberated from this theocracy, they would rapidly become prosperous, be good neighbors, and be a remarkable step in the right direction. I'm very proud of President Trump because he stood up against the appeasement, defeatist mentality of the elites and has continued to say, no nuclear weapons in Iran, period. As long as he sticks to that and allows Netanyahu to continue his work, I think we will presently see a remarkable historic change in the Middle East.
You know, we have talked on the show several times last week. We've talked about this Persian diaspora that exists in New York, in Washington, D.C., in L.A., for example. And as you say, these are successful bankers and investors and entrepreneurs and business people, and they still have a lot of ties, to friends and relatives in Iran itself. But the other point I'll make is, Mark Levin mentioned this last night, free people don't do what Iran does. In fact, free people don't do what the Nazis did in World War II. Free people don't do what Mussolini did. Free people don't do what the Japanese did. Free people don't behave this way with nuclear weapons to destroy other countries. And so that is another reason, because this thing's a police state, and it will forever be a police state, a terrorist, military-run police state, unless and until, and here's my point, Newt, the Iranian street has to overturn them. We can't overturn them. We can't do nation building. We tried that. It doesn't work out very well. The Iranian street has to do it, Newt. Your thought?
Well, my thought is that the Israelis need to move strategically towards taking out every asset of the Revolutionary Guard. The more we weaken the police forces, which have been the forces of tyranny, the greater the opportunity will be for the people of Iran. And there's pretty good evidence that about 80% of the country, 4 out of every 5 Iranians, oppose the regime. But as recently as 2 years ago, 500 of them were hung in public by a dictatorship in order to scare people. So I think you have to recognize breaking down the regime. Frankly, I think hitting that television station is a good idea, cutting off all communication between the regime and the street, destroying the people who are the primary oppressors so people can start to gather, talk with each other, and frankly, potentially by getting Elon Musk to move Starlink over Iran, enabling the people of the country to communicate with each other, because right now the state-controlled internet is not available, and so it's hard for people to organize. But I think that there's a real possibility that if the focus is replacing the mullahs, that in fact You're not going to have to worry about bombing Fordow, because part of the agreement with the new government will be that they will do it themselves as part of a process. No nuclear weapons, no strategic missiles, but huge prosperity and freedom for the people of Iran. I think that's a pretty winning formula.
You know, just last thought. I agree with you 100%. 100%. Back in 2009, Obama's first year as president, you recall, Iran had elections that were phony and rigged and overturned, and there were 1 million Iranians in the street, and Obama refused to back them. And then Iran came in and subjugated them, threw them in jail. God knows what he did with them, shot some of the leaders. We had a chance then. If anything like that happens again, we should stand up and start talking in favor of the Iranian street. Last word, Newt Gingrich. What you think?
That's right. Well, my last word is President Trump's on the right track. I hope that he resists all the pressure from both the American and foreign elites, all of whom have an appeasement, defeatist attitude. And I hope he realizes that only by replacing the mullahs will you be able to get to a safe, peaceful Iranian future. And that, by the way, would mark him as one of the greatest leaders in modern history.
Absolutely. Terrific stuff, Newt Gingrich. Thank you, my friend. We appreciate it very, very much.